Oh, hi there. Nijigasaki was and still is a very unique group in the Love Live series. Many would probably say that it was the start of Love Live being experimental, and it's something other groups would follow, for better or for worse. As Love Live keeps getting older and older, more of its history will start becoming lost, and as we've seen with groups such as Hasunosora and Liela, they aren't exactly archived the best. Speaking as someone who does a bunch of Love Live research, so let's take a trip back in time to 2017, when Nijigasaki first started, and how exactly we got to know these characters. I mentioned this story many times on my videos, but the group Nijigasaki first started with random polls on the end girls, who were basically filler girls you would use in Squad Festival until you got actual Love Live characters. I'm sorry, don't take that personally. The result of one of these secret polls eventually culminated in an announcement for the Squad Festival series called PDP. Perfect Dream Project. Now we know that PDP was a codename for Love Live All-Stars, but at the time, the group that was associated with PDP was Nijigasaki, so people tend to associate the two. This started in March of 2017, and you can find out more about their history in one of my first long-form Love Live videos. One of the most important aspects of Nijigasaki was that we didn't know what they were doing. They kept their goals and the project incredibly secret, but they kinda need us to get invested into these characters, so fuck it, random content go. Live streams, art, and comics. Or 4-koma. Let's lay the rundown. When the project started and the girls were officially announced, they split the, at the time, 9 members into groups of 3. Each of these groups would receive their very own comic series that would be published on 3 different apps, Dengeki, Famitsu, and Sif. But I see people calling it Bushiroad, so we're gonna call it Bushiroad instead because I know someone will think I'm talking about the actual Sif. These comics would run until December of 2018, where all the comics would be combined into a new series, Nijion. I do want to correct a point I made in my very first Nijigasaki video. For those unaware, All-Stars was delayed from 2018 to 2019, and in that video, I said that the comics were extended because of that delay, but that's not exactly true. The comics were not extended, they died in 2018 due to the company's app shutting down. What was a potential result of the All-Stars delay was Nijion, which was possibly created in order to fill the time before All-Stars arrived. It isn't exactly confirmed, but you can sort of assume given the delay. Or maybe they just want all the girls in the one comic. Either way, I do apologize for that error. Now while the apps the comics were under fell through and are shut down, there still exists archives of these 4-koma comic strips. I did not know about these. I was previously under the knowledge that there were only a handful of these comics, and this is my fault entirely. I used Ramen translations as my basis for how much content there was because I didn't think that Ramen would stop translating at some point. Minus 1 point in the Noodle channel. Anyway, on stream, Drugfreeromance alerted me to a link containing the archives, and let's just say I was a bit surprised. What's this link? Yeah, I'll see if there's anything missing. 70? Whoa! Wait, what the fuck? Unfortunately, all of it was in Japanese, so after making a tweet about being like, help! Riimuda on Discord hooked me up some English translation links. Thank you, man, if you're listening. Listen, even as a Love Life historian myself, I'm not, there are still new things to discover. New people to meet. More opportunities to come. With that in mind though, there are some things I said in previous Love Life videos that have to be retconned, specifically with that timeline video. Why did I think that these comic series end in like 20 chapters, bro? Now I put a lot of focus on these comics, and you might wonder why, so let me ask you a question. What do you remember from Nijigasaki, or PDP? Like I mentioned earlier, there was so much mystery involved in what they were doing, and this didn't go unnoticed. People were confused. I get it, Love Life was doing new stuff and it was testing the waters for what it could do. Having the comics be consistently shot out was kind of a failsafe plan for while they tried working on the main aspects of Nijigasaki. Think about it. What is the goal of Love Life at its core? For any group or series? If you say money, you're right, but let's be a bit more philosophical. Characters. Who are these characters and why should I care? That's the standard for every Love Life group and it makes sense. Why should I invest time into them? Why should I invest effort and money into them? Compared to the other pieces of content Niji had, the comics are pretty plentiful and easy to understand. From the research I did back in my first Niji video, it seemed to imply that Aqours was taking all of their attention. They barely got any presents. Nijigasaki at that time was just words. They were like potential man of Love Life, which probably was the Bluebird. I'm playing. I'm sorry for the Bluebird slander. I'll go back to slandering Hasunosora. What is Rina's thoughts on Hasu? Kaho's annoying. Koze is a drama queen. Wait, don't tell Alex that. Don't tell Alex that. Do not send this clip to Alex, I swear to God. With that being said, these comics helped establish who these characters were in a more slice of life format, a more comedy-based format. 4-koma strips are a very easy way to introduce characters and their unique traits. With the limited panels, you gotta get to the point. Scenario happens, how do characters react? Bam, done. And in the case of Nijigasaki, how do the reactions help bond or show the differences between characters? Having them be split into different groups was very smart to highlight each of the characters' charm points and how they conflict with each other. The chemistry is built more naturally, and it's good. Yeah. While these 4-komas went on for a while, some are way longer than others, and as I figured out, not everything is translated. Dengeki specifically. It only has around 50 chapters translated, so I sadly won't be able to cover the entirety of that series. Although to be real, I'm not going chapter by chapter, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. There's not much plot here. It's just funny moments that I can't translate for shit. I need to learn Japanese, I swear. Let's go over the 3 groups. We got the Famitsu gang with Ayumu, Ai, and Rina. Next is the Dengeki gang with Setsuna, Kasumi, and Karen. And finally, the Bushiroad gang with Kanata, Emma, and Shizuku, aka the N-Girls. Now I'm sure you know stuff from the 4 komas, even if you never got the chance to read it, and we'll get into it, don't worry, hold your horses, but we're going step by step. Today, we're going to go on a deep dive into the 4 koma series, the impact of it, what if Nijigasaki, etc, all the other shit I say in my other Love Live videos. Let's start with the Sif girls. Before we start though, I do want to give a very obviously given shout out to all the fan translators and typesetters and everyone involved in translating these. Quite literally everything here is thanks to dedicated fans wanting to make sure other people like me can read these. I know translations have been a bit of a touchy subject regarding Love Life recently, so more thanks should be given to those that go out of their way to translate. So shouts to Ramen, Jin, Drugfreeromance, Amaranth, everyone involved in the idol story, Riimuda, anyone who helped with translations. With that being said, let's go. There's a couple of reasons I want to focus on the Bushiroad comics first. One, the cast of the N-Girls, who have been around since the start of Sif, meaning they're old as fuck, but also the artist for this series, Fujimaru, is someone who is very familiar with the N-Girls in general. In fact, this isn't their first contribution to Love Life. Before PDP even existed, there was a comic series in the School Idol Festival app in 2016 that was created by the same artist. This comic series revolved around the N-Girls, getting themselves into fun and stupid scenarios that were mainly gags. Some of the chapters even contained traces of the girls that would soon become a part of Nijigasaki. Kanata still eats the gift she had for Haruka, Shizuku is still a feeder girl, I just got done watching Hamilton, she was eating that shit up, and Emma is still a sweetheart. In a way, you can see these as early drafts for what would become the Bushiroad comics. Remember, this was 1 year ago. Nijigasaki didn't exist at all, so this artist was just putting focus onto all these N-Girls. It ended in October of 2017, so it was still being produced as the Bushiroad comics were being made. Viewing it with this perspective is so interesting because you can easily see an alternate universe where any of these girls won the voting and became the Niji girls we have now. I know all the N-Girls had some personality besides just being a card, but these comics really showed a different side of them. It showed the communities the N-Girls had with each other with no mention of Muse or Aqua. At least the Niji anime kept them somewhat alive. I wanted to mention this series first, as it directly relates to the Bushiroad comics we get a year later. It visually looks the same, and the structure is also the same. A lot of the chapters are very actions speak louder than words. While some strips have dialogue, a lot of it is visual comedy, so even if you don't understand the language, you'll still get the joke. It's something I praise Playtime for, if anyone watched that video. The transition to the Bushiroad comics is pretty smooth though. It just focuses on Kanata, Shizuku, and Emma instead of the other N-Girls. The series is pretty meta, starting with the characters acknowledging that they won the poll and how they're in this PDP project. We get introduction chapters for each of the characters to help understand them more. Emma being a foreigner, Shizuku being an actor, Kanata falling asleep and needing her sister Haruka to do her introduction. Yeah, things are pretty normal around here. The bulk of the comic are just moments and slice of life regarding the Ram shenanigans they get up to, like training to become school idols, how to look pretty, going to sleep, stuff that maybe you and I do, I don't know. Are you an idol? Am I an idol? I don't know, not yet. Following the series in real time no doubt had fun immersion, such as chapters focusing on new years or the seasons changing. Because of the way the comics were made, character traits are exaggerated to comedic levels. One of my favorites is Kanata being sleepy, me for real, so she's just wrapping a burrito like 90% of the time. And also eating all the gifts. Emma's still a sweetheart. They tend to focus on the fact she's a foreigner, so she doesn't get certain things. Also, if you are curious, yes, even back then her chest was focused on. Shizuku's probably the most normal one out of the group. You can convince me she's like the pro tag of the series. She's an actor, and while that does get some presence in the comic, she's a lot more quirky. I fucking suck at adjectives. Shizuku probably gets some of the most shit that would probably happen to you comic strips, and honestly, it's helped me get a lot more appreciation for her. Not saying I didn't like her, I liked her focus episodes, but I don't know. After this, I think I can relate to her a lot more to her. The artist definitely knows she's the most normal, as they typically pair Emma and Kanata together, with Shizuku being the odd one out due to them not being normal. While I do like Shizuku here, if I'm being real, the versions of these characters aren't exactly the same as the current ones you probably know. This goes for all the comics, most specifically Famitsu, but it's apparent here as well. It's a more satirical version of these characters. They'll often act out of character, react violently in ways you wouldn't see in a canon series, and honestly it's funny as fuck. I can imagine some of my friends doing some shit like this. Traces of the modern day versions can be seen though, especially towards the end of the series. It only ended around 56 chapters, which is the shortest out of the 3 series. I don't know if the artist had to stop or the stiff app was like fuck you, but it is kind of bizarre compared to the others. There were some extra chapters, but I'm gonna wait to address them because some of them were crossovers with the other series, so we should wait. Also, Aqua gets a random mention, which probably fits into the lore somewhere, but this isn't the time of the video, so I won't think too hard for this video. One thing I really like about the Bushiroad comics is the art style. I really love the simple basic square shapes with the simple eyes. It works really well with the colors, and you can tell the artists can lock in when they want to, creating locked in moments. It's honestly really cute. The shading can be simple but complicated when it needs to be, and backgrounds don't need to be overly complicated. It gets the job done while also being funny. The way this artist does 4 komas is really perfect for gags, and it's like, even if I didn't know Japanese, I could still understand a lot of these strips. so the fact that it's universal gives it a nice charm. This specific comic series holds a very special place for the history of Sif and Nijigasaki because it's kind of a one and done. Let me explain. This art style in this comic series, once it died with no chance of it coming back. With Dengeki, the artist fit would make Nijion, and that art style would be the basis for all the Niji comics from that point forward. Nijion Animation would take it even further and adapt that art style to full 3D. The artist for Famitsu would go on to work on the new Nijigasaki comics where shit goes bonkers, so this artist and their art style is a relic of the past now. Seeing the art style will always remind me of the Engels and Sif and the random shit they did. It's great they still have some presence, but rest in peace, y'all were cool, rest in peace Sif, Sif free. Now let's move on to the Dengeki 4 Koma. I know you want me to do Famitsu, and trust me, I have shit to say, but I'm leaving the best for last, trust me. Welcome Setsuna, Kasumi, and Karen, and this trio is where things get chaotic. While the Bushiroad comics were a lot more chill with gags and fun interactions with a little sprinkle of fun conflict, this comic series is full of banter and evil shenanigans from yours truly. The art style and writing is pretty much Nijion as you know, so if you're familiar with that series, it's basically a prototype version of it. Immediately though, the vibes feel different, the colors are brighter, backgrounds are more detailed, and the cast works perfect with each other. As much as I love the Bushiroad gang, there is a lot more potential for fun events between the Dengeki gang. Setsuna is the overly passionate school idol lover who also happens to be a school idol. She'd probably be cosplaying every day from her favorite series. Kasumi is the evil gremlin who wants to be the best school idol and will do whatever it takes to be at the top, even if it causes her to be evil. But she's too nice, so it doesn't really work. Finally, Karin is the mature person on the surface, but deep down she's easily embarrassed and also somewhat stupid. Put all three of them into a room and you have an instigator, a self-proclaimed adult, and a fangirl. Chaos will ensue. Every scenario has each of the characters react in a way that all bounces off each other, making each chapter either funny or stupid as fuck. Kasumi's ego, Karin's level-headedness, Setsuna's it makes it very entertaining. This is one of those series where I can't really go in depth unless I cover all the strips, which hey, maybe I'll do on stream, but Kasumi is definitely the highlight. She's borderline antagonistic, but her tricks usually end up exploding in her face, or she's too nice. Or the other scenario, everyone else is too nice. She's very easy to rage bait in a good and bad way, and it does get taken advantage of by Karen very often, and Setsuna sometimes does it unintentionally. The best way to describe it is that Kasumi and Setsuna are the children, and Karin is the adult. Until you realize Karin is also a kid, and then it's just three children. This is probably the biggest case of the PDP scenario taking place. The solo individual idols concept plays a large point in this, as they all compete with each other in a friendly-ish manner. If Bushiroad was a family, then Dengeki are all friends jokingly working against each other. It's not too serious because we'll see what happens when things get risen up a level. Also, I didn't know where to insert this part, but Karin harasses everyone pretty often. I don't know if they were trying to make her next nose me, but... Actually, wait, yeah, that checks out. I don't intend to be mean by saying this, but you really learn a lot more about the characters and the relationships they have between each other in this style of comic. The gags in simple format work well in Bushiroad, but there's a lot more development that can be done with more dialogue and interactions. You can easily see why this became the standard for Nijigasaki comics moving forward. It's really unfortunate that not all of this has been translated. It stops at 50, and it kinda sucks because this is the longest one at 140 chapters. For clarification, once more, Bushiroad has 50 chapters, and spoiler alert for Famitsu, it has 70. What the fuck? One thing that we should know during this time were the popularity polls. The comics weren't just for shits and giggles, they helped us learn who these characters are, and in turn, it helps us choose who we vote for. If the comic did a poor job at showing these characters, it would perhaps be reflected in the polls. Again, the comics weren't the only thing Niji has, so you can't properly source it, but it is worth to note. The Love Live Wikia has a really good archive of all the results of the voting. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dengeki comics had a huge influence on perhaps Setsuna and Karen winning a ton of polls. You know, it did its job to make them as lovable as possible, which goes for all groups, yada yada yada, I know what you want. Famitsu 4 Koma. This is probably the most infamous, as it's the most insane, the most coolest, the most bizarre, the most out of character to some people, and the most funniest one. Following Ayumu, Rina, and Ai, these three get themselves into shit that really sounds like throwing darts at a dartboard. The series breaks the fourth wall, mentions popularity polls directly, and one chapter is dedicated to Ayumu talking to someone. Who is this person? They go to space, there's a giant snake, and within it all contains some of the most wild versions of these characters we've seen yet. Ai is probably the most normal one out of all of them. She's still energetic, still sweet and nice, basically the big sister. She's the most straight-faced one, and often has to deal with the bizarre shit that happens around her. Rina is very different. If you're thinking of the Rina from the anime, or maybe even All-Stars, you'll be in for a surprise. Rina in this series is pretty much just a girl that just so happens to be wearing a mask. I know some people have thoughts on the different interpretations we've seen of Rina, but this one is definitely the most I exist. I don't necessarily mean it in a bad way, it's just I don't have too much to say about Rina besides the funny moments that occur because of her board. It really seems like most of the chapters are dedicated to that bit, and I understand there wasn't official lore yet, so you gotta use all the material you have. She's still shy and has a bit of an arc revolving around her expressing emotions, but it's not delved in too deeply. Honestly, it reminds me a lot of the All-Stars continuity, but I just didn't want to say it fully because it's been a hot minute since I read it. Irina still exists in this continuity, so that's nice. Also, this is one of the few times you'll ever see Rina yell at Ayame, which is, huh. Oh, and speaking of Ayame, Ayumu in the Famitsu 4 Koma is something else, and I love it, because it's so in character. Now, a big Ayumu fan could probably disagree with me with a shit ton of evidence and probably be right, but let me present my case. This is 2017 Ayumu. She isn't exactly the most defined, so there's a lot of directions you can take with her character. When I think of Ayumu, most of her core traits are being passionate for her thoughts, being insecure because of those thoughts, and being an up-and-coming school idol, although she's been saying that for like 10 years, so get a grip, girl. This version of Ayumu still retains those traits, but it's just over-exaggerated to the max for comedy. She attempts to murder and beat up people because of her insecurities. She beats herself up for doing simple mistakes. She assaults people. She's so passionate in her thoughts, she breaks Rina's privacy to show her ant farm. When I phrase it like this, it's still kind of in character, but her anger is what most people know her for. She insults people, breaks the fourth wall, devises plans to be the most popular that involves sabotage and manipulation. There is nothing this girl won't do to be the best. She's not afraid to speak the truth, to express her honest thoughts, even if she probably has bad intentions as well. She's also really insecure. The chapter of her making her own Ayumu boy gives me fucking secondhand embarrassment every time. Ayumu's passion does create some sad moments, like when I stopped talking to Ayumu about games because she can't stop saying kusoge, which means shitty game, and she has the biggest smile saying it, and it's painted as Ayumu genuinely being happy, so it's just really sad when you reach the end of the page. Fucked up what they've been doing to Ayumu. The direction of how Ayumu expresses her thoughts is the biggest difference between this continuity and the main one. Anyone who knows of Ayumu knows that she often represses her emotions, which cause anger / lashing out, so this is just an alternate way of expressing those emotions. In fact, you can actually see the change in expressing her emotions in real time, as the artist makes Ayumu more similar to the version we know. More passionate, more loving, until the final chapter, which just murders Shizuku. Old habits die hard, I guess. If you want to have a fun time going down a rabbit hole and experiencing chaos, then I recommend reading this series on Manga Dex. It's just bullshit one after the other, and you can easily see why this artist got brought back for the new series, because only they can create some outlandish shit like this. Also, Nico and Nozomi get cameo appearances in this. Don't question it, man. If you try to make sense of it, you'll just die. Now that we talked about all 3 series, let's talk about the fun crossovers they have with each other. Now, I'm not too sure when these chapters were released, but since they were all running around the same time, the artist had a bit of fun switching characters up. Seeing the characters in the Famitsu and Bushiroad art style is so bizarre. Dengeki doesn't count, we have Nijion. One thing I adore is that most of the character traits are intact. Ayumu is still a menace, and Cosplay being put in the Famitsu universe is so funny. You would expect her to perfectly fit in since she's a gremlin, but no, she's a normal one. Setsuna and Karen become over-exaggerated and quirky, while she stays the same and is very much confused. She still is a gremlin though, through and through. It's kinda sad the Dengeki series wasn't fully translated, so I can't talk about certain panels, but that's okay, we have the archive, and Nijion's basically a new version of it, so it's cool, I suppose. The history of the Niji 4 Koma isn't a one-night stand. They still get referenced today, either be Famitsu Ayumu, or characters getting a little cameo appearance. And its spirit still lives on with Nijion and the Rebellion series, which honestly, if you want more crazy shit with the entire cast of Love Live, go read that. But if you want more wholesome stuff, read Nijion. Rest in peace, Bushiroad and the Angles, you shall be missed. The impact of the 4 Koma series shouldn't be understated, as they serve as a huge part of Niji's history. Without this, we wouldn't have the depth and perception of the characters we have today. Of course, it wasn't the only source of content, but these comics were frequent and funny. Chances were, when you fought the character, you fought the moment in the 4 Koma series. It brought life to these characters in a way that hadn't been done before. What made this more intriguing was how experimental it was. Niji's always been this way, and I think it's one of the better experiments they've done. And it's kind of one of the cases where they could get away with it without seeming like the entire franchise is dead because of it. I mean, who said that? I doubt we'll see something on this level again. You know, something going on for over a year. Mostly because Love Live doesn't exactly have a front now, if that makes sense. Also, it's just better to focus on your entire group of content that'll be relevant to, future content, like, anime and lives of the sort. It's still a cool thing to talk about regarding Love Live, though. It wasn't useless, but it also wasn't the most important thing in the universe, even though to me it kind of was. Nijigasaki is my bias, though, so I'll give it any excuses.